Hey, I'm Kyle. Welcome to this episode of the Newfoundland Hobbyist. So we have a great project planned for today. I've been on a bit of a gun kick lately. Lots of gun projects, lots of shooting going on. I've been doing some projects of my own. If you've been following me on over on my YouTube channel, you'll see lots of gun stuff, and that's just kind of a phase I'm going through right now. I never really drop any phases. I always keep kind of things going, but always picking up new things, and sometimes things will get pushed off a little bit for a while. But always picking up new hobbies. This time we got a really cool gun to look at. I'm not really sure what it is. I know it's really old. I found it on an ad on the Newfoundland Classifieds, contacted the guy. I had it shipped to me. I love the styling on this, and I got it for a really cool deal. I thought I got it for a good deal. When I had it come and I looked at it, it was a lot rougher than I was expecting. This is an old break action breech loader 12 gauge. Very, very small little gun. Nice, feels neat, but it is rough to say the least. That's an understatement. Let's come in for a closer look. We got a lot of work to do to make this gun look nice. Our wood on this gun is really rough as well, unfortunately, and that's the part that intimidates me the most. The biggest problem is the buttstock here. Now, it's really rough. So this is the better side, even though we have a split right down through here. Now, it's not a wide open split. It's not too bad, but it is split. When I start to turn it over, you can see the bigger problem here. And that is a big split right down through here. I've got to plug a hole there if I can get this stock to work. If you want to take a closer look at the metalwork here. So here's what we're dealing with. We still got a number there, which is cool, but really dirty, grimy, rough. You come over to the barrel, we've got some deep chatter marks and where the barrel's been gouged out. So let's take care of the first part, and that's disassembly here. So just release the pressure on this pin, and it's already part ways out. I'm just gonna tap it through here. There we go. Our barrel can separate. Okay, most that I've seen are Phillips heads, but it's hard to know. Yeah, it feels like this is a Phillips head, or it's biting the screwdriver anyways. There we have it. And our screw, wow, is really long on this one. I'm actually touching the head of the screw right now. And there we have it. So by this point in time, I'm figuring this gun must have been buried in the ground and recently dug up. It is absolutely horrendous. So this is very nice here. I love the look of this. Of course, we're going to clean it up and refinish it. So now all I've done is tapped out this little pin, remove one little screw to pull out the trigger assembly here. And I pulled this out because when you work the hammer and the trigger, you'll notice that everything feels super grimy, which when I pull it out, you can absolutely see that it's full of rust and grime. Now, I really didn't intend on breaking the gun down this far, but the more I take it apart, the more I can see just a terrible mess. I'm going to remove the little assembly here. I'm not even sure the name of it that allows the gun to break off, so like the release here, because I can see the little plate inside that actually catches the barrel is just a mangled mess. I really don't want to take it apart for fear of not getting it back together. That's the honest truth. I'm not super confident, like with all of these little parts, and I'm afraid that I won't get a spring back in, or won't get something back in place. Okay, that's one spring out. So you can probably tell here why I felt the need to break this down and pull out this internal component. I mean, if you can just see the grime on this thing, is just disgusting. We're going to clean everything up well, but if I'm going to do it, I want to do a good job. Make sure that when you put it back together, it doesn't need to come back apart to this degree for a long time. Now, I don't know if it's the best or not, but I really like using brake cleaner for stuff like this, because it's fairly pressurized in the can. It comes out with a lot of pressure, and I find it cuts grease extremely well. I'm going to start spraying brake cleaner in there, give it a little, let it sit for a few minutes, and give it a little scrub out from inside with an old toothbrush. Never throw away old toothbrushes. They are fantastic for stuff like this. Okay, so what I didn't really want to do at first, I ended up doing, and that was completely stripping all this trigger assembly, all its components and springs, all besides the actual trigger, which has a peened end pin going through this housing here, which I don't want to recreate. So I left that in. I've cleaned up as best as I can now with the pieces still in there like it is. And now I'm going to start putting it back together. I've cleaned this all up. I cleaned it up on the wire wheel on the bench grinder. Now, all the stuff I wasn't planning to happen happened. I didn't want to take it all apart, and I did. I didn't want to take it all apart because, like I said before, I was a little bit scared of getting it all back together. And that's exactly what happened. I've been trying for probably 20 minutes. My fingers are gone trying to get the spring and everything all back in place with the hammer here as well. And it's just been a brute of a job. Really tough. This spring is so strong to compress, and to get this pin back through this hole has been just terrible. But we've got her now. It's looking a lot better. It's nice and clean. I'm real happy with it. We're pretty much done with this. I'll give it a little bit more of an oiling, but this is pretty much going to stay like it is. I'm not going to do too much to it. I'm not going to polish it or anything crazy. And this is a nice amount of what's the word I'm looking for? A nice amount of wear and tear. Nice amount of character. There we go. That I'm not going to polish this out, because the little dents and nicks and pits on this are just what you'd expect from a gun this age. This hammer was extremely hard to pull back, almost to the point where you need to use 2 thumbs, and really gritty. Now it's just very nice, silky smooth, with all that grit cleaned out. And I oiled the pivot here, I oiled the trigger pivot. So I've completely cleaned out the inside of this action. It's fairly clean. Now I'm going to throw it on the wire wheel and see how clean we can get the outside of it. I'm not sure if I'm going to completely sand this thing down to raw steel and glue it. I'm not sure if that's completely necessary. We'll see. I'm going to clean it up first, and then we'll know what we're working with. And the next part, we're going to get to work on the barrel. It definitely looks like to me that this barrel was sawed off at some point. Cut off shorter, maybe enough to cut the choke out, because it looks like this bead sight here is original. So if it wasn't much longer than an inch or so more than that originally. So I'm thinking someone cut the choke out, and they did a real rough job up here on the end of the barrel. So I'm going to square that off, level it out, clean it up, chamfer the edge just so it looks proper. So as soon as I looked at this end of this barrel the first time, I knew that it was sawed off. And I don't want anyone else to be able to tell that. There we go. Much better finish. Nice chamfered edge. Nice and level. It's all squared off. And it's polished. So I'll probably end up bluing this barrel. So that'll be a nice finish. It'll look like a factory finish. I just took a little bit of superfine sandpaper and just brushed around the inside enough to take away any little burr there. But it's a nice scratchy edge, so it's not chamfered out. Okay, so progress or cleaning it up was going pretty slow on the bench grinder, so I ended up using one of those wire wheels on an angle grinder, which is much more aggressive. The bristles are really stiff, and I think it worked out for the good, because those really stiff bristles almost not really filed away, but a lot of those little scratches and stuff, that the bristle brush was coarse enough to kind of blend it all together. So now after cleaning it up, and I threw it on the buffing wheel right quick just to smooth out that finish, it looks honestly fantastic. I think I'm going to blue everything just for protection against water and to give it that nice dark finish, and to show you guys the whole process of bluing, just in case you haven't seen it before. So there's the finish we got. You can see it's very nice. It's not too bad. It's a few of those real deep scratches are still there. You can still see them. A little bit of pitting and stuff you can see. But overall, this barrel looks excellent. When it's blued, I think it'll look absolutely lovely. Cleaned up that front bead there, and it looks great. You would never know now that this barrel was cut down, except for being a little bit shorter to the bead here. But it looks lovely. Okay, now that we've got the steel work just about done, except for bluing, we'll leave that till pretty much the last stage. Got to get to work on this wood. Now when I screw this fore-end back in place, we've got a few issues there. First of all, this whole fore-end is just really rough, but it's reusable. We just got to fix it up here. We have a piece chipped away here, and on the other side we have a big piece chipped away here, the same thing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work this down a little bit, both with my spoke shave, maybe the belt sander, a little bit of sandpaper, and just round this down so it doesn't look like it was broken, so it looks like it was intentional. Then I'll scrape this whole surface down, and we'll see what kind of finish we have then. They're really rough. I'm not going to get it perfect, but I just kind of got to live with that. I'm keeping it because it's original. So I just have my little Stanley spoke shave here. This one is not vintage, but it does work very nicely. And I'm just going to work this down slowly just to get a nice even finish. I'll try to match it on both sides, so I'll take one side down to meet it. You can do some real crafty stuff with a good spoke shave this sharp. Now to quickly take this piece of stock down to a better finish, there's a technique that I've kind of figured out. Maybe a lot of you probably already know about it already. You can buy a tool called a cabinet scraper, which is a flat piece of metal that's it's just a panel of metal, and it's sharpened in an interesting way that creates a burr on the bottom square edge of the material. When you scrape it across the wood, it takes just the finest shaving, much finer than with, say, a hand plane. I find I can get a similar effect, since I don't have a cabinet scraper, I can get a similar effect with a new utility knife blade. If you just scrape it horizontally like that across the surface of the wood, it has the same effect. So it cuts really quickly and it leaves a nice smooth finish. It's much faster than sandpaper and you can control it a little better. I usually still give it a brush with sandpaper later, but it just works really well, especially like over this little bit of checkering that's here. I can go over the top without blending this all together and get a nice even finish. Hopefully save some of that checkering. Just works great here, like for shaving this all down. Getting a nice even finish works really well and much quicker than sandpaper. And see what we end up with. We'll be able to get a better look at it. Right now the wood kind of looks dark and punky, so it's a little hard to see what you're working with. But I have some wood filler here. I might... Okay, so after wedging this stock open quite a ways, and it hasn't give yet, I've decided to stop trying to wedge it. It's open plenty enough now that I could pour a bunch of glue in there. So that is exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to clamp it in the vise there and get as much glue as I can down in this seam, and then I'll put some clamping pressure on it and leave it for a few hours. Okay, so here's where this huge crack was running, right here and on top. And right now with the wood filler you can't see it. We'll see what happens when I sand it down. It's just looking pretty great. Okay, while our stock is drying, it's time to do the metal work on this gun. And that is to blue all the metal work. Now the first thing I'm going to do is spray down the barrel and the action. That's what we're working on. The barrel and the action with brake cleaner, because brake cleaner cuts oil. The main thing is oils. Gun blue doesn't like to go on over oils. You want steel that is stripped bare. Even after using brake cleaner and the supplied metal cleaner, the chemical was still not being accepted by the steel because of oil. So if I could make one note, make sure you over clean. You can see how patchy the chemical is going on here, and it's just not working. So I had to resort to another clean and then a reapply. Okay, let's try this again in a different way. I washed this barrel all down with some mineral spirits, some paint thinner, just to cut any other grease which there must be on there. And this time I'm using some clean shop towels just in case there is any oil in that sponge brush, in the sponge brushes. I'm not sure if there are. I was assuming there weren't, but perhaps. Okay, this time it's going on a little more like we want. You can see it's darkening. So there must have been oils there somewhere. Once it's done, you just let it sit for a couple minutes and then you're going to rinse it. Rinse it in hot water, or however the instruction on yours calls for. Mine calls for to rinse in hot water. Okay, still being careful not to touch too much here with my actual skin. I've just got a dry, clean shop towel here. I'm just going to give this barrel a little wipe down with the hot water. Now all these kits usually come with some steel wool to kind of buff the steel a little bit after each coat, or I do it after each coat. And it really does help to even out the finish. Right now we got some sort of like almost a bluish cast. I can see, but this definitely helps even out the finish big time. See what you're working with before you go on to your second coat, which we're about to do now. I'll just repeat this exactly what you saw a couple more times until I get it as black as I want it. When I get the color I'm looking for, I'll stop, give it a final buff with the steel wool here, and we're good. Get some gun blue on our towel here. Let's see what happens to this piece. Okay, now this piece is going on evenly. So I cleaned up this piece with the mineral spirits before I made my first attempt. I should have did that with the other piece. I usually do that, but I figured with the brake cleaner and the metal cleaner I used, it would be sufficient, but certainly not. So just before we put it all back together, I want to show you guys that blued action and how nice it was. Just a beautiful luster on it with that bluing and the buffing with the polish, or with the steel wool, sorry. I haven't polished this at all. That's just the finish we get. Very nice. So here we go. Let's start the reassembly. Got that beautiful action all cleaned up. This assembly here was really sticky and grimy, and I completely disassembled it from the inside. All this locking lever system. Cut out all the grime and grease, removed the rust, and packed some hard grease in there. Cleaned up the spring so it slides nicely, and it just runs beautifully there. Now, cleaned up all the trigger assembly, cleaned up the spring, cleaned the shaft here so everything slides a lot nicer. This hammer here was almost a two-handed job to pull that back and lock before, and now it's really nice the way it should be. Everything's oiled. Let's feed that hammer up through here. And watch, this is beautiful, gets me every time. Look at how that snaps together. So there it is, another restoration in the books. A beautiful old brake action 12 gauge. This gun turned out great. The bluing especially came out, despite our challenges at first, it came out just beautifully. It feels great now. The wood looks good. Again, not perfect. Kind of had to work with what we had there, but beautiful nonetheless. This is a nice petite little 12 gauge now, nice and small, really light little gun, and not overly long. It's going to be a great little 12 gauge for packing in the woods, and a nice little shelf piece as well. I got to figure out how to put a sling on it, so we'll see that later on, but it just runs beautifully there now. That pivot all cleaned up and oiled, all the action and everything inside, just feels so nice. If you put the time in, put the effort in, you're sure to finish with a nice project every time. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. This certainly was a fun one for me. A little bit daunting, a little bit challenging, but a lot of fun. Now we've got something cool for it. If you're looking for more cool content like you see here, head over to YouTube, search up Kyle Noseworthy. You'll find my channel, and you'll see lots of cool content just like this, tons of restorations and stuff. If you're looking to ask me any questions, head over to Facebook and search Kyle Noseworthy Weeder Fan. You'll come up with my channel page, and we can have a chat there, or whatever you'd like. Thanks for watching. Hope you tune in next week to the Newfoundland Hobbyist.